Hi everyone, this is Ryan. I'm the head of Aleron Voice Studios and I'm inviting you all to watch our production of Oedipus Rex by Igor Stravinsky. This is in collaboration with Dulang Sibol and this will be on June 20 and 21, 2026. You can get your tickets at aleron.helixpay.ph. See you there!
Hi, hello everybody. Hello,
Hi.
Annie. Hi, welcome back to the podcast. I'm Kevin Masca, manager of Aleron, and I'm joined by our guest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Of course. Hi, everyone. I'm Enrico Lagasca. I'm a bass baritone. I live in New York City, and I'm glad to be here.
Enrico, I know you're a professional singer now. You're a solo singer for the most part in the US, but a lot of it really started with the Madrigal Singers. And the Madrigal Singers are really one of the iconic choirs in the Philippines. So I think there are a few people better to ask the following question.
Oh, no.
And the question I'm gonna ask is, for you, what does it mean but to have a choral tradition? Diba? It's a word kasi that we often throw around in the industry as well when we're talking like, oh, we're building the Philippine choral tradition, the choral tradition of this country, of that country.
Right.
What
right.
does choral tradition mean to you?
Right. It's so interesting. Choral tradition, at least, I think it's for me. I'm not quite sure about, like, how to really... Because, like, for example, a choral tradition, say, in the Western world is, like, traditionally the Leipzig Bach Festival will, like, do this every year for many years and decades now. That has been a tradition in Leipzig. Again, culture is more of, like, the ecosystem of
Like the people,
the
how
people
it's
around
done
it.
actually.
Yeah. So for me, circling back sa choral tradition, the culture in it is like, like how the mads or like the singers evolve sa mads, but it's the same sort of like pakikisama, or like how interaction with like with alumni and present group and trainees and all that stuff. Yeah. So I don't know if I really quite answered your question,
Well,
but
no,
like, I
that's
hope
fair.
it was
Parang I
a-
think ang nangyari dyan is na-decompose natin siya into two parts. You have your choral tradition, which is, I guess, more institutional. You were talking
Sure.
about
Yeah. I
the
think
Bach
so.
festivals, whereas you also have your choral culture naman,
Yeah.
which is yun nga, how we as choristers actually interact
Yeah.
with one another. So
Yeah.
we can talk about
yeah.
those in turn. Actually, now
Yeah,
nabanggit
yeah.
naman natin siya. Si choral tradition, iniisip ko, parang are there equivalents ba in the Philippines to like those yearly festivals, yearly choral events?
I think now we do have the Andrea or
Now we do.
Veneration
I think that
Festival.
started a bit over 10 years ago at this
Yeah,
point, if I'm not
yeah, because
mistaken.
it's is it every 2 years or something like that? Oh my god! But I don't really think we have that sort of like big choral tradition in terms of like festivals and all that stuff. But we do, however, have a tradition of a very packed Christmas season. Like, and not just Christmas season for like just musician, but choral musicians.
Yes,
Like
yes.
choral artists are very busy during Christmas season. That tradition has been handed down from our church tradition, which is basically like we have choirs singing at churches in like the Simbang Gabi and all that stuff, and like also this tradition of like pangangaroling in like the Christmas time, which is actually a group of singers, which I would call a choir.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
it's that. So that for me, that tradition has been passed and handed over for like centuries and like years and years. And we might not have the bigger festivals except for just one, but we do have this like Christmas choral, extravaganza every December.
It's really crazy. It's really crazy if you've ever experienced it. Like sometimes you'd go caroling like in 2 or 3 events in a single night. Sometimes you'd have choirs that are splitting into groups of like 3 or 4 para
Right.
lang makarami. You've been in the States for a while. Parang how do the choral traditions there naman compare to the ones that you're seeing here in the Philippines? Like meron din bang very active Christmas caroling thing?
Yeah, any symphony orchestra or symphony chorus would say there's a Messiah tradition, right? So you hop from one city to the other, and all these like symphony tandems, as I call it, orchestra and choir. They perform Messiah every year. So yes, so there's like during Christmas time, yan yung annually like talagang present nila. It's just like the Messiah season. You know, even artists, even singers are like, "Oh, it's Messiah season." You know, like it's a sometimes they would even post their like season at a glance or like whatever, or like your Messiah season schedule. You know, and I think like for example, Messiah aside, say Saint Olaf Choir, right? The Saint Olaf Choir tradition of they have these like dedicated yearly concerts on specific days, and specific times, anniversaries in honor of this and honor of that. I think that is also a very well kept tradition. In the UK, for example, Lessons and Carols, you know,
Yes.
like that has been an annual tradition. So yes, I mean, I think there are traditions here and there, pockets here and there of that are around the world.
Another thing that you mentioned a while ago is how choral tradition can be different from choral culture,
Mm-hmm.
which is how we interact naman with one another,
Right.
how we actually do things.
I think the difference is very subtle,
Mm-mm,
you know, between
absolutely.
choral tradition and choral culture. But like for example, I would categorize culture as like every Thursday rehearsal there is a pakain. And the reason why I'm mentioning this pakain or like the concept of having a meal after rehearsal, it is the best way of like fellowship for us, for like just not just, you know, musicians after rehearsal, but like for example, even at work,
Mm.
right? So like on a Friday night, if people go to happy hour, that has been just the culture of that office, for example, to just like go on a little happy hour for food and drinks. I am a believer also the meals are the greatest form of like fellowship in like big groups, for example. That's the best way to just like interact is over a good meal. I think that is a culture, which I believe is like very strong here in the Philippines. Because like for example, choirs here, they really know each other. They go on tour. You know, they become honestly like you know my closest friends are from the Mads. You know, like 30 years or 20 years or more. Like sila pa rin yung closest people that I know and I spend my time with every time I come home.
Yung food culture na yan, I mean, I absolutely agree that it's very strong here in the Philippines. Diba? We Filipinos, we love to eat. I guess ako naman in my experience, because I also studied abroad for a while and there I sang in a few choirs. I was actually quite surprised na even there, meron ding pakain culture pala. This was in the UK na parang ano naman siya, parang tea and and
Right.
biscuits in the middle of rehearsals. It's a different flavor of it, but it's absolutely the same thing. And that brings to mind one of the things that I was thinking about. Diba? So I also had experiencing abroad. You obviously have a lot of experiencing abroad. I don't know if you'll agree with me. One of the things I noticed is that as a chorister, you have a lot of opportunities to sing with many different choirs.
Right.
Na in a given week, maybe you have 5 rehearsals, all with different choirs. Whereas here, and feel free to disagree with me again, I feel like the Philippine experience instead is that when you're with the Madrigal Singers, kunwari, or when you're with Aleron, generally you're with Aleron or you're with the Madrigal Singers.
Right.
Is that similar to your view?
So the thing is that I sing with I sing with a lot of professional choirs. I can be in different rosters. I think let's insert the term roster
All right.
right here. So I'm in that roster. I don't regularly sing with them in all concerts, but you can be in that roster. So now in the Philippines, like say, sure with if you're singing with the Mads, I guess the next question for this that I would put on the table is that as a Mad singer can sing sa other choirs as well, right? For example, say Aleron. Given kasi of how our schedules are here in the Philippines, I don't think number one that might be like kind of like possible. The Mads itself is a busy entity, so like they have their set of schedule na talagang parang they're very busy people, you know. But I mean, some of them teach in choirs as well, and there also is this, I guess, tradition of like when you're singing just like with one choir here in the Philippines, that's your choir through and through forever and ever, right? So in 2007, I ended my stint with the Mads, and then I came back 2009. 2008, our friends from ACS went to the US. And Sir Giorgio and Mimi Agbay then were like, hey, we're going to the US. We probably need another bass. And I wasn't working then yet in 2008. And I was like, sure. You know, it was sort of like a little bit bago-bago pala. It kind of is almost taboo to like kind of cross that little pod, right? Which I did. I asked Sir Mark. I was just like, well, it's more of like informing him. It's like, hey, I'm singing with ACS in 2008, and I'm just gonna go on a US tour with them. Fine, you got the blessing, and you go to the ACS. They welcome you with open arms. There, some of them or most of them are still good friends of mine. That was only possible because tapos na ako sa mads. Diba? The
graduate ka
schedule,
na kasi,
yeah. But bumalik naman ako ng mads in 2009, diba? So parang, it is possible, it should be normal. I think it should be fine. So like, if I'm, hypothetically, if I'm here in the Philippines and I'm singing with Aleron, I should, and if the mads would like me, I should still sing with the mads. Like, you know, like, if schedule permits. I think that should be just okay and just normal.
No,
You know, like if you sing
agree.
from one roster to the other. That's also the concept of like your church community choirs. You know, your 5 p.m. choir is actually different from your 7 p.m. choir, your noon choir tomorrow. Minsan tatlong different pang leaders yan, di ba? Sa mga the barangay or city choirs everywhere, di ba? So parang and it's fine to just sing in all those things as long as you're, of course, schedule permits. Pero I mean, you guys are very busy here. Like the way that is only possible for me, say US then, is that when these professional choirs kind of like tailor their weekly schedules to not overlap from one another. But for example, if this week has Conspirary and this week has Skylark, and both organizations ask me, say, if can you sing this gig, can you sing this gig, diba? This is when I'm like, okay, I'll choose now which one. You know, so that means that it's not possible for me to do both gigs. That's when I, you know, make the decision to like, okay, I'm gonna do
But it's
XX over
usually
the
like
other.
a schedule-driven thing. Hindi naman siya parang values-driven
No,
discussion.
no, no, no.
din eh.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's schedule and then, no. I mean, it's schedule. But pag di ka nag-overlap sila, of course, I look at programming, of course, and I look at, you know, of course, fee, and I look at like how
It's
much
a lot more
work,
pragmatic.
and how much work I need to put on this thing before I like, say yes or no to a gig.
No, I absolutely agree that it is great when singers are able to sing with different groups. Syempre, as long as they're able to commit and they're able to perform naman to the best of their abilities, I feel like
Right.
it really gives the singers a lot of opportunities to grow din kasi.
Right.
Opportunities to grow, opportunities to see different ways of working, different ways of singing. In the US, you mentioned that it's possible because professional choirs are really working to make these schedules work. Diba? They
Yeah.
work so that the schedules don't overlap, so that they can accommodate the different professional singers that they want on their roster. Ngayon, I guess one of the reasons that it's not maybe as common yet in the Philippines is because we don't really have a professional choir active now. Before there was the San Miguel, and I don't know when they stopped, but they have stopped for a while now.
Yeah, I think they stopped in 2000, maybe 5 or 6. I may be incorrect.
Quite
And
a
then-
while back.
Yeah.
diba? Oo. Why do you think in the Philippines wala pang na-establish na talagang tumatagal na professionalized choir?
I don't think we have infrastructure for it. How professional choirs in America function is that they have a donor base. And they have a donor base, they may have, and there are a lot of grants in the US where they can apply for, and like, you know, there's also a kind of like fixed system that is like, that it falls under that umbrella of infrastructure. Hourly rates, concert rates, per diem, lodging, travel, there's like a lot of components just to like, you know, to build, to get like a singular singer to be part of this professional group. So that infrastructure has been kind of built through the years, from the symphony choruses, the professional symphony choruses, to like these smaller professional choirs around the country. I don't think we have that yet in the Philippines. I don't think it's something that, I don't know how we could get to that point that there is, you know, that we can actually pay singers XYZ, or like we can sort of devise or formulate something na we can mirror that model. San Miguel did it. It was a corporate entity with the San Miguel Corporation, with Mr. C and Sir Jojo and Oscar Pantaleon. You know, they did very well in that run, and they tried, and I applaud them for that, really. But it will not exist if we really don't have the reality of it. It's like the donor base and the money for it, which actually is kind of like is equal to the infrastructure of a professional group. Because the
It's
because the
money.
professional choir is not that different from like a professional orchestra, and it's not that different from a professional opera company. You know, it's you have the donor base, you have your pay scale, you have all your contracts and terms and all that, and it doesn't exceed XYZ and all that. And that's your bread and butter. It's like your, that's your actual job. Unfortunately, we don't really quite have it here, and I honestly don't know how or where
What it
to
would
start.
take.
Yeah, and what
Uh-huh.
would it take? But there are some, I guess. I mean, some they try maybe give stipend here and
Mm.
there, or some food allowance maybe, or something like that. I mean, there are corporate choirs here, I think, di ba? I mean, they're not paid, but at least, like, it's part of their being in the corporates, like,
Mm.
say, Philcoa choir, that's something like that, or like Pivox choir, whatever. I don't know who the choirs are now dito sa Philippines, pero yeah, so something like that. It's something that I don't know if we're ready for.
Diba? So it's professionalized. I like the way you put it, salaried singers. And I wanted to ask you actually, when you become a salaried singer, I guess my question is, are there ways in which the way you engage with the music or singing in choir has changed now that it is a job versus when it was still, I guess, passion project or
Right, right, right. They really should not have, because like we started this as a hobby. We started this as something we like, art and money. Right? It's kind of like it's the sacred and the profane. Creating art is very sacred, and then when we talk about cash, it's kind of profanity. Or like, ugh. But this art form, this presentation, we present ourselves. I mean, sure, some people say it's a form of entertainment. Some people also will be like, this is we are put on stage to really share something that we're passionate about and we love, right? Getting compensated for that does not diminish my love for it at all. I am just in a lucky position that I'm earning and getting money out of it. And there is so much work, ton of work that we put preparation of what we put on stage, right? And those are unpaid work, really. Come to think of it, it's like I was talking earlier about these hourly things and hourly rates and concert rates, right? But before you actually count those hours of like how you're paid, there are so many other hours that you have to use and that you use to like prepare for XYZ, for like a performance na hindi nakikita. So pay for your services, for all the work that you've done to present this, actually being vulnerable on stage and giving yourself. It's like it's a good thing. So to answer your question, it doesn't really quite affect how I present myself, regardless if it's free or not, or like I also don't want to really actually refrain myself from using free. It's sure, you're not salaried, or a singer or a volunteer choir is not salaried and all that, but it's enough. Not really enough payment, but it's enough for me to like just see that you received what I've presented and I've shown you, like I've shared with you, like, and that's more than enough for me usually. Now, the reality of it is the business part of it is, of course, I have to put food on my table. We work hard for this career. Na parang same with the accountants and the nurses and all that stuff, and all these like beautiful careers out there that are not music related, and we have to present it, and we have to, like, it's so funny because these types of conversation only applies for choral singing. You wouldn't ask Beyonce, why do I have to pay $1,000 for Beyonce ticket?
no, that's absolutely fair. That's
Yeah.
absolutely fair. And you look at like the prices of concert tickets nga here in the Philippines, not for classical music,
yeah.
but for like kunwari K-pop,
Yeah,
things
yeah,
like
for
that.
example, yeah.
And people just shell out XYZ amount of money.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then this conversation is always because of sa atin lang in the choral scene. I mean, classical singers actually in the Philippines as well, di ba?
In general, yeah.
In general, but I mean, and then di pa natin napag-uusapan yung conversation about, oh, it's for the church. It's there's just this there's a lot of conversation na pwede nating i-touch about that. Pero itong mga these prompts actually just come about sa atin lang. Sa atin lang represent kasi nga I don't
It
know.
feels like
I
the
actually don't
value
know.
of our art form is always the one being challenged.
Yeah,
Huh?
yeah. And you now the value is that you're not, the talent that you put on stage is not just worth or valued at $50, right? But the thing is that I don't know, like tayo lang talaga, like choristers, choir singers in the Philippines, and it's still a puzzle for a lot of people. I would say not just in the Philippines. I guess for some, like communities as well in America or like in Europe. Why do we have to pay for these services? And then you look at me and you're like, you just said services. and it's service work, So it's like there is always a happy medium about it. And I think it rests on the artist if one wants it to be equated with value and what you're worth. But if you put aside all the feelings about it, you prepare for a big role. You pay for the coaches. You went to school. You pay for the voice lessons. You went to school. You pay for all these like movement directors, for Reiki, for your therapist, for your this and that. You pay for your gowns. You pay for your dermatologist. You pay for you just pay for these services. And then for this preparation para sa role na to, diba? And then you get zero? No, it's just like yung hindi nila naintindihan. And me as an audience, that parang if my net worth is say $100 million, I'm like, and I don't give money, I'm just like, wait, it doesn't. The great Cardi B once said, the math ain't mathing. So it's just So for me, it's like. So circling back to sinabi mo kanina, like in the Philippines, we really don't have infrastructure. Like I think kung nandito ako, I think that's one of the things that I would probably try to, instead of like, of course, advocate for pay for singers and all that stuff, but more of like building a donor base that will not just like support the choral scene during Christmas. We'll support, in America we call it angel donors for some, like we they really donate like year in and out for a choir or whatever, and forever and ever, diba? Or legacy, whatever. So that's one thing that I wish, if I were here, like I'd like to talk to XYZ person. It's like, is there any way that you can not just funnel or give your money for like the Christmas time, like all year round. But for that to happen, of course, it needs some tweaks. Like, as for example, donations in America are tax deductible and all that. So that's another part of the business that we're not like, talking about.
Yeah, and maybe we don't really have control over at this point.
Yeah. So we don't really have that sort of sangay ng gobyerno to do that. Na parang, okay,
Department of Music Affairs.
Yeah. Well, we don't have the National Foundation for the Arts.
Yeah.
We don't have grants we don't have like an Enrico Lagasca grant. That grants $10,000 for like unlimited whatever. No, we don't have that. In the U.S., it's just transparent like that in terms of like donating money and all that, and then it goes directly to budget for this, budget for that, and all that. So, ang daming pwedeng pag-usapan about the business part of professional choirs. But the one thing that I will just like, of course, reinforce is that regardless of what I'm paid, it doesn't diminish the fact that I really still love doing this work. But it sounds privileged because I'm in the position that I can do that.
Getting paid.
Yeah. But the other side of it is that it's possible. So not just for me, it's possible for everybody. Yeah.
No, you mentioned a few things like about building the donor base, about yung question of people asking like, ano bang value niyan? Do I have to pay for that? That I think is really super interesting to me. Kasi ang tanong dyan, when you look at the Philippines, I mean, we can talk about, sangay ng gobyerno, but at the end of the day, the reason none of this has been set up is maybe, I don't know, I'm not the government, hindi pa na-articulate or hindi pa socialized what exactly it is ba? What is the value that we're adding to society with the things that we're doing? When we in Aleron, we put up concerts, or when you put up your performances, intrinsically clear sa atin na parang this obviously is valuable to me. Diba? There is value. I'm growing because of this. Pero maybe one of the things that I struggle with pa rin naman, and I don't know, maybe you struggle with this, parang okay, pero anong value nito to other people that would actually make this to them worth investing in? Because you're right, na parang we could talk about how to make this a money-making business talaga. Na my performances, meron akong ROI, etc., etc. I don't know how feasible that is for classical music, because even in the States, it operates on a donor basis. Diba? I don't think Beyonce operates on a donor basis, for example. Diba yun talagang...
She's her own donor. So.
Correct. May business talaga siya. And maybe this is where I stop and ask you for help. If you could help me, if meron ka naisip a way to articulate this. Like, what is actually the value added? What is the value add of the things we're doing to society, but that will make what we do worth investing in?
Yeah, I think it's the clarity and transparency of the art that we want to present, right? So, for example, hypothetically, like if I were here and I would build a choir, I would just dedicate the choir into catalog. When I say catalog, no concerts, just recordings. And then donor A, B, C through Z would be like, what do you mean just recordings? Like, I would like to record and just keep recording per season. So, like, for say 4 quarters a season, like, I'll probably record 4 discs per season. It's like, what is that for? What is the value of that? What are you trying to catalog and record? It is my goal to record a collection of a lot of arrangements of like Filipino folk songs arranged by XYZ singers and just to catalog that whole thing. It could be hundreds of them. That is my project for 2027. The clarity and transparency of what I would like to present as an art form, right? So you are a recording choir. So for example, yun yung gagawin ko. You know exactly what you want to present, like what you're saying earlier. And then from there, that's when I will go to the donor base, to the people who may probably support.
It's
who
easier
may
to
probably
pitch when it's clear,
it's
right?
easier to pitch when it's clear because I can't just like be I'm building this new choral artists choir in Pandacan, Manila, and then we will just present XYZ. Like they sure this is one of the hundreds of other choirs in the Philippines. Now, what will set you aside from the others, right? So, in 2001, I remember this in a very hot like church called Church of the Jesu.
Aircon na yun ngayon.
Aircon na yun ngayon.
Oo.
Fairness. No, I mean, it was my first time seeing Ateneo Chamber Singers. Mind blowing. And that whole concept of like all sacred repertory and like with respect to like the Philippine sacred repertoire and also ng Western repertoire. They did some Robin Estrada, they did UD, I think, and I think they did some Mendelssohn, some 100. They did, I mean, some double choir stuff. And it was for me clear. So if I were an adult Enrico then, in the business part of it, this is how I will really market it. It's very clear that I would like to share the sacred choral repertory sa States, America. I mean, of course, there are church choirs like that. And Ateneo already has 2 outstanding groups like Bukas Palad and Hangad, right? But now really concentrate it to like, all the Western grades that have not been performed here yet. So for example, like in the US, we have the Crossing Choir in Philadelphia. Their goal is all new commissioned works. So that is their kind of like brand. So there are a lot of followers. There's a following. We'll support it. There are a lot of supporters that do
It's
that.
very clear what they're
Yeah,
supporting. Hindi
yeah.
lang siya generic na this is a choir. Or
Yeah.
hindi lang siya based on the people in that choir na I'm gonna support any kasi I like any.
Yeah,
kunwari.
and because it's also like if I put myself, especially these days, while I kind of want to know what to expect,
Mm.
with of course the excitement of like okay what's coming up, right? But like for example, I know what the voice is of Lisa Davidson, for example. Like if she puts a recital, I know that voice. Okay, so that's the presentation, that's the voice, that's the brand. Now it's the repertoire that will excite me. Something like that. So for me, for choirs, it's like if you say you will only do new commissioned works. I know that that's the thing. Like whenever I attend and give money and like be a donor for this choir that only does new commissioned works. Now the what will excite me is like what is this new work for today, or like for this next concert, right? Like and who are these composers now? Like this composer from Bohol or this composer from Tagum Davao. Like oh my God, all these composers that I haven't heard of. Like new commission works. So like for me, and I'll put my business hat. I'll be like, oh, and there are more composers in Mindanao. And I'll like pitch. But for us to commission them, we need XYZ money to continue doing this. At the same time, paying for studio, paying for this, and paying for rehearsal pianist and all that stuff. So like it's clear. And then if I were donating money, it's like okay, that's the goal. Like, and there are people like that. There are people they would like to support that and not really question us as like what we do and what this thing they're supporting. Yeah.
Speaking about choirs with very clear goals, I'd like to talk now and ask you about Kaleidoscope Vocal Ensemble, which, if I'm not mistaken, is a group you're a co-founder of.
Yes.
Would you like to talk a bit about what that ensemble is?
Yes. So Kaleidoscope Vocal Ensemble, we kind of co-founded it just right after the pandemic, or well, actually, like it was sort of we were envisioning it pre-pandemic, right? Okay, so many things about it. Number one is representation in the choral arts. So no, it's a smaller group of like octet. If we expand to 10 or 12 singers from different backgrounds, racial backgrounds, with expertise in early and contemporary music. Yun yung prompt for like Kaleidoscope, right? Now, why those? There aren't a lot of like artists of color in early music that are working on stage. Not enough, you know. So we want them to like. So being in a Kaleidoscope, if you look at their bios and their like CVs, like Sherry Pantaki or Michelle Kennedy or Cesar, like all these like artists, we do have an extensive like sort of very great list of groups that we sing in as early music singers. Unfortunately, I'm probably just one of like the other, like the only Asian guy in like this group, right? Or says he's probably the only Mexican singer in the group, you know. So we wanted to start with that, and the main goal is not really to concertize, but actually the main goal is to visit schools
Okay.
and to actually share that there is a seat for you on the table for that. Like there's a seat for us in early music and contemporary music, and open that and have that conversation that it is okay for a brown person to sing Bach. You know, it is also okay for a black person to sing Purcell or like Handel. You know, so we wanted to like extend it and show that sort of like advocacy to like the bigger choral scene or not the bigger performing scene actually, because these singers are soloists. So we wanted to do that, and then that in schools, and also at the same time new music, because early in new music their relationship is just very very close, you know, because then that was their early music, and you know the new music now, you know, and pushing for these contemporary composers and their vision of writing texts, for example, and our shared sort of like life experiences. For example, we sing this piece, Nigra Sum, I am black and beautiful.
Oh wow.
Actually, in the Bible, and it's I am black but beautiful, but you know, we've changed it to I am black and beautiful. Interspersed in the Nigra Sum chant, composed in a way that is very baroque, is the other choirs for double choirs, it's just octet, with texts that are microaggressions directed towards us. You know, like you should have been a player of the NFL. You know, oh, you know, would you open that door for me? You know, because they would think that we are not artists in like the corridor, like in the hallway, right? And these are true life experiences. Like these are like compiled microaggressions that we experience because they wouldn't even think that we are musicians or we were the musicians that on stage, because we were probably, you know, probably not white, and we're probably wearing our concert blacks. So they were like, okay, you're probably an usher or something like that. So it was composed in a sort of Baroque style with continuo double choir with a chant overlaying the whole architecture of the piece. And that's the whole, in a nutshell, that is who we are. It's new music, Baroque, respect in like all these like hurtful things that we experience in the world, and at the same time it is okay for us to sing this piece.
Yeah.
It has been quite, you know, difficult also like to share it. Difficult and challenging, actually. More challenging than difficult, I guess, to like share it in schools, because you know, you will find a young singer who'll be like, say, from the Philippines, right? And then they're like, well, am I really for Bach and Buxtehude and all that stuff? And you know, and we encourage him, and that's as far as we can go. You know, hopefully,
Early music is
for now.
not the most popular genre for
Yeah,
for
yeah,
school
yeah.
people. I
Yeah,
suppose.
yeah.
For
For
people in
example,
that age.
unless of course you're at Yale or like some schools that have like dedicated early music programs, or but most of the, you know, most of the colleges that where we go to, they don't really quite have that. So I know, so we try to at least open those doors and open conversations, really. And then to top all that is like our personal why we are on stage. Like we are members of Cloud from like individual experiences of our journeys from home. Ceci from Mexico, Sherry from India, and then Jonathan from Baltimore, being black in Baltimore, and me from the Philippines. You know, so we all have this like history and our journeys that we can share and put into
The
music.
experience of being like the other
Yeah.
in this place.
Yeah. Because like right here, I belong like easy, you know. But coming there and going there and just like trying to like make it there, you know, like in America as an artist of color, there are challenges to it. My favorite is like whenever I see the season announcements. It's the time of year when they announce their seasons, right, across America, of like 26, 27 season of this orchestra XYZ, and I see a quartet of like soloists, and none of them is an artist of color, and I'm
The
like,
widest quartet you've ever seen.
so I'd be like, oh gosh, what happened? You know, just like where was I, or like, you know, and then of course it goes, you spiral, like, am I worth it? You know, so like the advocacy of Kaleidoscope is basically like just have that conversation and hopefully get to those who are, I would say gatekeepers, but they kind of are the gatekeepers of these bigger opportunities and bigger doors. It is our hope that through this little thing, you know, like we get to have these conversations with arts admins, really, artistic planners, you know. I mean, conductors know us, but it's like artistic planners, conductor, and larger picture is that, of course, there's also the donor base again, which, of course, you know, like if a donor, unfortunately, there is this an out lesbian conductor who was fired from a Lutheran university in America, and she's been teaching there for years. But the president of that school really sad that, you know, like, we are letting you go because the donor base is not a fan of your being lesbian. You know, so for like now we're not relying on their talents, but like because of their sexual preference. It's like it just doesn't make sense to me. Yeah. So it's our goal, and we try to open those doors of conversation.
Yeah, I'm curious though, because you mentioned that your group Kaleidoscope usually does projects in schools. No? So what do those projects look like? Are they just concerts ba, or meron ba mga engagement? And then what does it look like?
Concerts and engagement, actually. More of engagements. Like some of them are like panel talks, 101, kind of like this, you know, like we are in like in a big semicircle on stage, and we kind of like introduce ourselves. The world is an oyster actually for Kaleidoscope panels, because basically we can talk about everything. You know, like we're given specific times, and then there are also master classes with students if we are engaged to do so, for style, for example, and all that. And then open rehearsals, and sometimes we collaborate with the university choir or the college choir. So that's pretty much like the whole menu of like the week with Kaleidoscope, and then we sort of end it with a concert. Or sometimes the other way around. We start with a concert, and then we end with like a bunch of panel talks. Just because people will be like, okay, based on what we saw, you know, XYZ, and you know what you guys do here. While the biggest event of that project, or those projects, are the concert, the center of it is like more of the conversations. That's like sort of the heart of like what we do with Kaleidoscope.
You know, that's super inspiring. That's actually super inspiring. I look at the Philippine choral scene, and you know, I don't have full visibility. Di ba? Minsan, I feel like I'm in my own bubble sa QC lang, ganyan. Siyempre, a lot of the choirs here are mga school choirs, mga church choirs. I'm sure there are, but I don't see as many rising na mga advocacy-based choirs who are really focused on engagement while also delivering music of a high level, for example. So I don't know, baka tayo. Well, no, something to workshop definitely, and I hope that, you know, hearing about this type of activity that is happening maybe on the other side of the world will inspire people to also try different things here in the Philippines.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, having a clear advocacy is great. Like, you know, the gay choruses around the world is great. Like, for example, like it's a welcome community for our gay brothers and sisters, and you know, this is where they can actually pour their like singing out there. So like that's why andame around the country, right? No, around the world actually, like but in the US particularly,
Per
like
state meron, di ba?
yeah. I mean, the one thing that always strikes me is that photo of the San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus during the HIV crisis. You know, like when they're all wearing red, and just like a few of them wearing white, and all that, in honor of those who unfortunately died of AIDS. And that's a powerful thing, and that's advocacy for me. And also, and there are many other ways to have a sort of advocacy. Like, for example, I mean, what we do with Kaleidoscope, for example. But here in the Philippines, I would like to be an advocate of just all female composers. Like, I'm just going to like present works of all women composers, living and dead alike. That's, I think, already is a form of advocacy of just like amplifying women's voices, female voices, in not just singing voices, but also written on with pen. It is just very focused, I guess. There can also be like acquired whose advocacy is like dedicated to our elderly, for example. Like welcoming all the elderlies in this like community choir, and just like really having them sing and have fun, regardless of your background and your like wherever you are in your vocal journey. You are more than welcome to join us. Like, so something like that. It's a good thing. It makes you feel good. It's just to like have that, and I hope we get more of that in the Philippines.
Yeah, I hope so too. So thank you so much, Annie. This
Very welcome.
conversation has actually been, not naman surprisingly, but a lot more inspiring than I guess initially anticipated. Your points about clarity of purpose, your points about even parang specializing is not a bad thing in this case, no? Na parang it makes it easier to communicate what you're doing. It makes it easier to garner support as well, and that it gives me, as someone who manages a group, really a lot to think about. Thank you so much. I
Very
think this episode, I don't know when this will air. Let's pretend maybe it'll air in May. But if
Great.
it does, is there anything where you can tell our listeners and watchers where they can find you?
Yeah, of course. I mean, totally. Like, I wish I could like fly back to the Philippines most of the time. So most of my stuff is online. I think I have a wonderful dedicated webmaster. I love her to bits. So it's easy as enricolagasca.com, and everything is there in the schedule. By the time of this airing, probably you will find my 26-27 season up. It should be actually up pretty soon once the contracts are, done. And I will be back in the Philippines in August. That's my plan, really, to watch Mark Carpian, the Mads, Mark's 25th year as choir master of the Mads, and before to go to World Symposium. I'm very excited about it because they have a really, really interesting theme of like imagining the future of whatever of choral music. And I myself, I'm very curious as a choral nerd, even though I sing a lot of solo stuff. Is like, what is really the future of choral music out there? Like, what else can we do? Like, how experimental can we go, and how far extroverted can we go with these things, or shall we retreat with our yearly messiahs, and
And
not
our
the-
yearly Christmas caroling.
in Christmas caroling, right? There are a lot of, like, they would say gimmick here and there, but I don't really think they're gimmicks, but they're just trying to reimagine the concert form, which I like. Where are we headed towards? So I'm very curious. So I made it a point in August to like do that and like really see it. And there are a lot of choirs in the Philippines. We've got like really, really good choirs, but there are only a few choirs that are really dedicated and like that has like a vision, mission that is very clear. And I think Aleron is one ever since Chris started, sort of like Chris is a good friend too, and it's just like, oh, okay, this is the brand, the vision, the mission. It evolves. It will continue to evolve, which is a beautiful thing. And I hope you guys continue to challenge your audiences, me included, because I'm an audience member from 4,000 miles away. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Everybody say thank you to Annie.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Carl from the Aleron podcast. If you like our discussions, please leave a like, a comment, and follow us. Thank you. Goodbye.